start over again. Hi, everyone. This is Federico with Cuttle, and welcome to the live stream. I hope you had a good 4th of July week. We had a little chance to take a break, and so I'm coming back to you with some make your own templates in Cuttle live stream. And today I wanted to talk about boxes, making boxes. I think I'm gonna jump into it right away because we have a lot of stuff to cover. So the basic idea I have is I wanna modify an existing template to make it work for something I somehow do very often. And I want to show you how I did it. So this is the problem I'm trying to solve. So I have a little show and tell set of pictures here. For some reason, I make these type of boxes for organizing things very often, where I take a regular box and then I add a little extension to the back, like a tab, or like a hanging tab. And so I can put a hole on it and then hang it on the wall. I find that kind of useful. So I can like make custom boxes. For example, here I made one that was like custom to this like wood glue. So I could like nicely place it on the wall. Here's a couple of other examples of kind of variations I've made at other times. Here I have my little alcohol bottle that I use to clean things. Specifically the 3D printer bed sometimes. So with this one, I actually made a little tag for it, but you can see this is another variation where I just have a single hole where I can place it. This is made out of chipboard, and this one is also made out of chipboard. This one's for storing pencils. This is for the acetone. And then more recently, I made these kind of longer ones that I wanted to put in the closet to store a couple of things. And so with this one, you can see I made holes, I made a pair of holes in the back, and I kind of made a nicer rounded corner. So that project seems to be keeps on evolving. So let's talk about how to do these. In the past, I made a video on how to modify the box, but like it wasn't fully parametric, meaning like when you change the width of the box, then the little tab would not change. But I want to cover today how to modify that. So let's get going. So I'm going to go to the templates. So to get here, I navigated to cuttle.xyz templates. And here I have a view of all the templates, and there are categories on top with the boxes, the laser cut boxes. So I'm going to click on this category. And I have a number of boxes here to choose from. But I'm going to choose the most basic one, I think, the open box with finger joints. This one is a free template. So I'm going to click on it. So that opens that template. And the basics of this one are something like these. I mean, a lot of you might be very familiar with it. There is a longer video here that covers all of it. And so the idea here is that you can choose the width, the depth, and the height of the box, and everything adjusts. And then you would choose the material thickness, meaning the thickness of the stuff you're going to be cutting. And so what that changes is the size of those tabs. So you can like connect, assemble them really nicely. And the curve will adjust the way the tabs interact. The bigger the curve, and the tighter the box is going to be when you assemble it. And then the smaller the curve, it's going to be a little bit looser. So in general, you can just go with the default. And then if it's too loose, then you just make it a tiny bit bigger as you go, like a tiny bit, meaning, go from 007 to 008. And then you can also adjust the tab width here, meaning so that's like the basics of the box. So we're going to be dealing with that. So what I want to do is create a copy of this template that is private and it's in my private folder. So the way I do that is I scroll up to the template page, and then there's an option here that says Open in Cuttle Editor. So I'm going to click that, and this immediately presents me with the there is a little prompt here that says this project is owned by Cuttle. Make a copy to save your changes. So what that means is that if I start making any changes here, it's not going to be saved to my folder. So I want to definitely click on copy this project. I'm going to click there. And so it takes a moment to copy, and then it says you made a copy, your changes will be now saved to your account. So this project is now mine. So I'm going to make some changes so I can make it different. So I'm going to change the README. I'm going to go back here. And so here I can actually start editing things. So I'm going to call it the hanging box. I'm going to change this cover picture just to differentiate it. I prepared, I had an older picture. So I'm going to just drag an image that I had on my desktop. If I drag it and I place it there, then it creates that image. So this is what I want to do. I want to extend this tab something like this. So I want to extend it to make it something like that. This is just like a mock-up, so this part is going to be the extension. This is the back of the box. And then I want to add a couple of holes here, 1 and 2. So what this is going to look like if I look at it here is that I'm going to choose the back of the box here. This is nicely labeled, and this section is the back. And so what I'm going to do is sort of extend this section and then add the holes. So let's go back to, I'm going to look here on the side of all the different components that make up this box. And I can see that there is one called the cut layout, which is the one we see on the front of the template. Then there is an assembly view. And then if I keep on clicking, there is one here called the front, and there is one called the back. And so this component is the one specifically I'm going to modify. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. So let's start with these. So the tab that I want to add, well, let's look a little bit at the way this is constructed. So if I click here, this is basically a rectangle, the back, that has the scale set by these parameters. I can see that the scale is inner width and inner height. And then to that rectangle, there is this modifier applied called replace edges. And so that replaces the edges of the rectangle and adds those tabs based on all the other parameters. So what I want to do is add a rectangle. So I'm going to grab my rectangle and put it here. And I want to kind of just join it to this one. But not only do I need to join it, I also need to position it, because let's see, if I make changes to this rectangle, let me show. This rectangle is controlled by the width. If I change the width, you can see how that changes, and also by the height. And so I want this one that I'm making to be always kind of following the height. And so I can do that in this fashion. So I'm going to position it first. So if I select the box that I put here, if I hold Command, you'll see that there is this little thing that appears here, which is the origin. And so the reason that's useful is that I can hold the Command or Control in Windows, and then I'm going to change that transform center to the bottom midpoint of the rectangle. So what that allows me to do is that it's an easier way of understanding where that is positioned. So when I select that and I look at the position here, I can see that I can control it with the y-axis. So if I make it 0, you'll see that it's positioned right at the center, but with the reference is the bottom section of the rectangle. So I want to position it. So here's where I'm going to start kind of typing sort of interesting stuff. So I know that this rectangle is the dimensions are controlled by inner height. So to move this one up, to move the one I just created up, I need to put the position equivalent to inner height. So if I do that, I'm going to type it here. Let's see what happens. So it placed it down. So whenever I get confused by directions, I can change, between positive and negative. So in this case, I need to be negative. So it places it up. But inner height is too much. So I only want half of inner height. So from here to here. So the way to say that is that half, I can divide it by 2. So that's half of inner height. And to confirm that my change made sense, if I change the height, let's see, you see that this rectangle is now following the height of the existing one. So that's a good start. Now I want to control the width, the dimension. So the trick here is that the box is controlled. Let's say I have access to this width parameter. So if I make my rectangle width, let's just see what happens. Sorry, I just changed the position. I actually meant to change the scale. So let's make the scale width. So that kind of seems to work in this case, but there is like a little caveat is that the way this box is made is that you can change the inner dimensions or you can choose the inner dimensions or the outer dimensions. If I choose the inner dimensions, then this rectangle is not always going to be up to this edge. So in order to do that, I'm going to tell you the trick is that there is an option. There is a parameter that was created for this box that controls the outer width. So I'm going to, instead of width, I'm going to type outer width. And apparently nothing changed, but if I were to change the box to the inner dimensions, you'll see that it's always going by the outer width. So, all right. So, and just to make sure that works, if I change the width, we'll see that new rectangle always updates by the width. So this is good. I think every time I make a change, I'm going to try and kind of confirm that it worked by moving things around like this. So that's my basic idea. So now I think often when I make these boxes, I want to sort of control the height of that hanging tab. So in that case, I'm actually going to create a parameter to change it. So I'm going to go here to there's a ton of parameters in this box, but I can go to create a new parameter. I click this plus sign, and I'm going to call it the hanging tab. I could be more specific. I could call it the hanging tab height. And let's start with something like, 1 inch. Sorry, I need to type all of that. Let's call it 1, press enter. And so now I need to take this parameter I just created, and I need to go sort of plug it into the scale, like right there. So in order to do that, I simply type that parameter I just created. So hanging tab height, and there's autofill, which is nice. So let's make sure that is working. If I change that changes that height. And then I want to make sure it plays with everything else. So if I change the height of the overall box, and then I change that. So, all right, so that's working. So hopefully you're following me with all these parameters. So I think the next thing is I kind of want to have these a little bit more organized. And one option to do that is to create a folder in these parameters. So if I go to the 3 dots here, ... there is an option to create a new folder. So I'm going to create a new folder, and I can name it, and I'm just going to call it the hanging tab options. The way those folders work is like when I'm looking at the README here, you'll see that, it didn't appear there because it doesn't have any things added to it. So I'm going to grab that hanging tab height, and I'm going to put it into the hanging tab options. So now I can sort of open and close those folders. It's just like a nice way of organizing things. Now, if I look at it here in the README, you'll see that now I get those options here. I can open them and close them. Kind of nice. So let's go back to making changes. So the basic idea here is that I want to join these two. So I can select everything I created. So I'm going to select that top tab and then the back. And I'm going to go to modify and I'm going to apply a Boolean union or weld. And that's like halfway there. And we are halfway through the live stream. So things are working. I can change the height. I can change that hanging tab height. And another way in which I can confirm things are working is that I can go to the layout views and I can see that the back has, it's updating nicely. Cool. So now let's move on to placing the holes for the hanging, for the attaching of the screws. So I'm going to start by grabbing a circle. I'm just going to kind of place it somewhere here. I'm going to place it on the center. And then I'm just going to select a basic size for that circle. So I'm going to click on the circle. I'm going to close this folder here so things are more visible. So I want that to be about 1/8 of an inch. So tiny hole. I most likely want to be able to modify that in my template. So I'm also going to make it into a parameter. So I'm going to extract that as a parameter by clicking on the 3 dots next to the scale. And so that's the whole scale. And I actually want to move it over to be a project parameter. So I'm going to click on the 3 dots and move over to project parameter. So now it's appears here with all of the rest. And I'm going to be organized and move it down to the hanging tab options, which is the thing that we're working on. And just to confirm that things are working, if I change that, yes, that hole is moving around. Now for the placement. So here's where a lot of interesting expressions are going to happen. Let's go back to something like that. So I'm going to click on that circle, and I know that that circle has, let's make it visible by closing these. So I know that that circle has a position. So I want to make that position work with everything else. So let's think about it for a moment. So on let's start with the y-axis, with the vertical. So I know I want to place it. Let me change the union here for a moment. So I know I want to place that hole high enough that is about, half of the height of the box, because that's from the origin to there is half of that. So I can actually type that. I can say, what were we using? Inner width divided by 2. Sorry, inner height divided by 2. My mistake. Inner height. So that will place it right here. And then I want to place it a little bit higher. So I want to place it, let's go all the way to the corner, and then we'll kind of walk back from there. So the other dimension here I also created. I call that one the tab height. So I'm going to subtract the tab height, the hanging tab height, and that's going to place it all the way up here. So it's all a bunch of addition and subtraction and sort of keeping track of the names, but I think hopefully this is making sense. Now let's move it on the horizontal axis. So I know that something similar applies here. I know that the width of the box, I want to move it by half the outer width. So if I type outer width, it's going to move it out of, it's going to be all the way over here. But I want half of that, so I'm going to divide it by 2. And that placed it right in the corner. And just to make sure things are working, if I change that width, so it follows, that my hole follows the corner. And if I change that height, my hole follows the corner as well, both on the horizontal and on the vertical axis. And now I want to sort of move it back. I want to create a sort of margin. So I think the margin should be about the same dimension on the horizontal and on the vertical axis. So actually, I'm just going to create a new parameter. I'm going to call it the margin. So here, or the whole margin. And then I'm going to move it down into my hanging tab options. So to stay organized. And let's start with like a 1/4 inch. So I just created it. Now I'm going to use it to position that hole or that circle. So basically, all of these crazy expression, place it in the corner. Now I want to move it down by the margin. So that means if I place the margin here, I believe I need to add a plus sign. So I say margin. Sorry, I call it whole margin. So it placed it down. That's what I wanted. And are things working? I just changed the height. So yeah, it placed it by exactly that amount and it moves, it works. So, and then I wanna do the same on the horizontal axis. So I'm gonna move it, this is the horizontal axis, by the margin. Sorry, I call it the whole margin. And that was the horizontal axis, so that means that would be the width. So if I change the width and the height, that hole follows. Nice. So I don't need to do the same for the other side because, I mean, that would be kind of tedious. But also I have this like easy way of mirroring the placement of that hole. So if I select that circle and then I apply the mirror repeat modifier, then it's going to place it. It's going to place a copy of it, an exact copy on the other side. And let's see if things are working. So it follows the width. I mean, this one follows the width and it follows the height. And if I change the margin, it also kind of moves it down in this kind of diagonal fashion, which is pretty much what I wanted. It's pretty good. So I disabled the Boolean union so I could see this line, but actually I'm going to enable it again. So I'm going to click here. And I can actually double check that things are working. And so this is, yeah, look at that. So if I look at the README, I have all the options here. And if I change the width, the holes follow. I can change the depth, nothing should affect that. The height. And then I have that hanging tab. So I can make a really big hanging tab, a really small one. The idea of the hanging tab is that it's above the box, so you can like place the screwdriver there. And the scale changes. Probably like if you make the hole too big, you're gonna have to adjust the margin a bit to place it inside. So that works. So yeah, so things are working. Now let's do some final touches. I think in general, I used like a 1/4 inch hole. And then that, it's hard to see. So the final thing I want to do is that I think a nice thing is to round those corners. It just gives it like a sort of polished look. So let's go back to that back component. And let's do the corner rounding. So I need to go back to that rectangle that I created, which is the tab. And I can actually name them here because keeping track of all these things is like, it can be really intense. So it's nice to, I mean, I like to keep things organized because I can definitely confuse myself. That's the reason I created this folder. But in this case, I can actually also rename this rectangle. I'm going to call it the hanging tab. I make it easier to navigate for future remixes that you might be doing on this project. So to that one, I wanna round the corners, and so I'm gonna apply that modifier called round corners. So you can already see what happened, and that is it rounded all the corners. So I make it bigger, which is not a terrible look now that I think of it. See how it looks like. It's not terrible. but I don't love it. So I'm gonna make a little change here. So here's the way you would round only 2 of the corners of the rectangle. So I'm gonna select that round corners modifier I placed here. Let's close these folders. So these changes the radius of how much you round those corners. And if you want to change individual corners, the way you write this expression right now is you create a couple of brackets. And we know it's a rectangle, so it only has 4 corners. So I'm going to type 4 zeros, meaning each one of these numbers is going to be one of the corners. And so if I get confused, but sometimes I need to find out which corner I'm rounding, and I'm looking for this particular one. So I can just like make changes. So this one corresponds to that corner, this first number. And if I keep going, you'll see that the next number corresponds to the following corner, and the next number corresponds to the following corner, and the next number to the following. So that means I only need to round the first one and the last one. And they're kind of being rounded individually, right? So if this was, I guess I'm going into detail about round corners, but yeah, sometimes you can actually add different, round them to different values, which is not useful to me in this project, but just so you know. So I want to round them both to the same value. And that almost, I mean, this is pretty good. This kind of almost concludes the thing. The final thing I would add, since I have another 3 minutes, is that, yeah, why not just let the user choose how much they want to round the corners by? So we can do something similar here. We can create another parameter, click the plus sign, and I'm going to call it corner rounding. Just going to move it down into the hanging tab options folder. And what did I choose? 1/4 inch. And so it's not doing anything to my corners right now because, again, I need to go ahead and plug it in from here into my round corners modifier. So I'm going to click that one. And so instead of, 0.5, sorry. So that one is going to be the corner rounding. This one is going to be the corner rounding. And so now I only need to change one number, and that's going to change both of those values. Let's look at it again. So let's make sure it's working. Yeah, there you go. Like a 1/2 inch looks good. And that makes the margin like that. And perhaps you might want to change the color of that circle because it's an inner cut. So we can just change that color here. In general, we actually tend to do red for the outside cuts. But so let's do, and black for the inside cuts. So we need to change that on this template. I'm going to make it purple for now. And that's good. I think that concludes this particular template. Let's see if things are working. Just a final check. So here is my SVG. Here's my README. So if I change the width, it's working. If I change the depth, it's working. The height is working. And then I have those hanging tab options. Change the height of that. If you make it 0, then it just moves the holes down, but which is legit. So 1/2 inch, and then I can change the margin of the hole, and I can change the corner rounding. What happens? Is it working? Oh yeah, so if it goes past a certain point, yeah, so it is working. Yeah, okay, I see it working. And yeah, so this is like this was a little bit more involved than what we've done in the past, because we went into looking at all those kind of existing expressions and names for different values. But hopefully this gives you a good idea. And I know I went a little bit fast, so if you want to rewatch it, I'll be uploading this one to YouTube as well, and it's going to be available in the Facebook group. So I hope this was a little bit of a stretch in that you learned something new. And if it was challenging and you have any questions, I will be happy to explain things again. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day.